Good evening, everyone. This is Pastor Anthony here with your Daily Excellence. Thank you guys so much for being on the channel today and being a part of our broadcast. And of course, as always, before before we take off this evening, I want to make sure that my volume is coming in nice and loud for you guys and that you can hear me. It does look like that we do have a little bit of a lag time over on YouTube this evening. Surprise, surprise. So, if you guys can just give me that little thumbs up there, let me know that I'm coming in crystal clear, and we will go over a couple of things real quick. I got Stephen Ben-Nun waiting in the background here, so he's going to pop on here in just a second. Kathleen Vegulo, good. Thank you very much for letting me know. We got Christienah here, so good to have our moderators joining us. We got Texas Girl, Joseph and Donna. We've got Travia Maydeen joining us, Deanna Shaw, Grandma Ginger Farm joining us. And so a couple of you guys coming in, everybody's starting to pile in. We got those of you watching us over on X and over on Rumble, good dozen of you over on Rumble, so good to have everybody. Cheyenne, good to have you with us. So thank you guys so much for being here. Remember to like, share, subscribe here on the channel. And just a couple things real quick, and let's see here. Just a few tidbits real fast is that tomorrow night we have Pastor Talk that will be live with myself and my wife. That will be coming on at 6 o'clock tomorrow night. And actually, tomorrow night my wife is going to be hosting it. I will not be hosting it because we have a special guest that will be joining her in our chairs tomorrow night. I will actually be behind the microphone and the computer tomorrow night. So you won't actually see me on camera for once. So that'll be kind of interesting. But anyway, you don't want to miss it. It's a time of devotional, time of prayer, and just good family fun tomorrow night at 6 o'clock Eastern Standard Time here on Daily Excellence. And then one last thing, if you haven't had a chance to do it yet, Daily Excellence coffee mugs. Oh, let's talk about those mugs. There we go. I must have accidentally hit my mic with the mug. Steven's over here. You went silent. But anyway, Daily Excellence mugs, guys. I try to do it a commercial, and I'm not good at it, so I won't quit my day job. Anyway, those mugs are $15.99 over on our website plus shipping. Allow about 6 weeks, and they will come in. So little thing you guys can do there. Real quick, gonna do a video from our sponsor, and then we're going to bring Stephen Ben-Nun right on here. So this is a word from EMP Shield.
With over 37 models that can be used around the world, our family of EMP protection devices installs easily in minutes. Being employed this year by federal organizations and electrical companies, the EMP Shield has been tested at Keystone Compliance, a federally approved DoD testing facility. Also serving as one of the world's fastest whole home surge protection devices, working in less than 1 nanosecond, the EMP Shield will protect against electromagnetic pulses, coronal mass ejections, lightning, and all forms of power surges. Proven to withstand more than 40 EMP strikes with zero degradation, the EMP Shield is also one of the world's strongest surge protectors, capable of withstanding over 100,000 amps.
All right, guys. So, yep, that's EMP Shield. If you haven't had an opportunity to check them out, go to empshield.com. Check out all the devices they have. If you want to protect your home, protect your boat, your generator, your anything electronic, that's the good place to go over there. And of course, if you use promo code DAILY, you will save $50 off your device. It's good for everyone. Saves your home from electromagnetic pulses that could come from weapons or come from things that could shoot from the sun, or plasma lightning, which we're getting into the springtime, so that could be an issue. All of those things, it will protect that. And of course, like I said, use promo code DAILY, get $50 off. You support your home, you support us at the same time, and it's kind of a win-win for everyone. So, all right. With all that being done, let's go ahead and bring on Stephen Ben-Nun. And there he is. And let me put me back on the screen because I just made Stephen Ben-Nun solo. Okay. There I am. There we go. We're both on here. And if you want to just do a mic check for me.
How does it sound?
All right. Good. I hear you.
Yes.
So I hear you loud and clear. Just want to make sure the audience out there. We got like a 30-second delay on YouTube, it looks like.
Yep, it's always got some kind of a delay.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, you mentioned the EMP Shield. Roddy Meyer, he's the vice president of the company and good friends with him. And recently, he was telling me that when I had Deborah Tavares on talking about the fires in California, and of course she's a big advocate against the smart meters because the smart meters being able to cause fires in houses. To me, he said, if you have an EMP shield, they cannot start a fire in your house using the smart meter. So, and we lost your volume again.
There we go. Yeah, they're saying there's an echo. And let's see. I think I just kicked on the echo cancellation, so maybe now they're saying it's much better.
Okay, good deal.
Boom, fixed. That's what Cookie Monster said. So, all right, perfect.
Well, I don't hear myself in the background either, so that's good.
All right, cool.
And hey, see, we have to be alike, right?
Yes, we have the same microphone. Yes.
See, all I got to do now is get a coffee mug, and I'll be. And Anthony, you've lost weight.
Yes, I have. I started a diet at the beginning of this year, and I've lost 18 pounds so far.
Good.
Trying to get healthier. So been working out and all kinds of stuff.
Well, I do have the weights laying on the floor somewhere here, but I try to avoid them if I can. But working out is good.
Yeah.
I started running for the first time after 15 years, so
yeah,
I found out I could still run.
Yeah, I pretty much started running the treadmill anyway. It's too cold to run outside, but yeah. So I went to the gym earlier this afternoon after work, and then just been dieting and sticking to it, and just not trying to live longer by any means, just trying to live healthier. That's all I'm doing.
Healthier is definitely smarter regardless, because you never know how long you're going to be here, and you don't want to be in bad shape as you get older. So I know after I hit 60, I lost almost 30 pounds. And but mine dealt with more with medication. So I only have one medication I'm on, and I've only been on ever 3 in my whole life, but I'm down to just 1 now.
Oh, wow. That's good. Yeah, I was on high blood pressure medicine and stuff, and since I lost the weight, I don't have to be on it anymore. So
very good. Very good. Yes. I was already borderline high blood pressure at the time, and yeah, I'm sure losing the weight had a lot to do with it. So I have normal 120/77 blood pressure.
That's good.
So, all right, what do you want to get into?
Everything.
I'm ready for everything.
All right. So here's what we're going to do tonight is, and my plan here is to, I wanted to bring you on just to kind of see where we're going from here. The world is changing. Matter of fact, I titled tonight's thought "Upside Down World." Okay, because sorry. because everything seems to be turning upside down, no matter who you are or where you look or anything like that. So that's where we're at. Let's see. Did I lose you again?
It looks like, can you hear me okay though, Anthony? I hear you, but.
Yeah, I can hear you. Okay.
But yeah, I'm like this. Oh, it says my screen is not responding. Lovely. It'll catch up here in a second.
Okay.
I'll tell you what, until it catches up, I think you came up with a brilliant title. I've just done a video, well, several here recently, but one in particular, I got into the Isaiah 24. And, you hear Brother Begley a lot quoting Isaiah 24, I think it's 15, about the earth wobbling. And you still hear me okay?
Yeah, I hear you fine.
Okay. I just want to make sure the sound's working. So, and but anyway, when you look at that in Isaiah, and you really begin to examine the entire chapter, even in the Hebrew language, it's very, very interesting. I know in one place, I think English says it turns the world upside down. I think that's in the first verse, but it actually doesn't say that. It says that the earth, that it distorts the face of the earth. And, I think about pole shifts, I think about Planet X when I'm hearing that type of verbiage. And the one thing that comes to mind is that when this happens, that they talk about the continents being ripped apart. And that's really what you're getting on that. But I think the reason why they did the upside down idea and is because of the fact at the very beginning of the verse, it uses a word that is literally means vomit. It doesn't, they say empty, but it means to vomit. It's like it vomits its inhabitants out. And which makes some people, I'm sure, wonder about, how's the earth really constructed? And, but the other thing that really gets me as well is that when you get to verse 5, there's a Hebrew word, and I don't have where I can see it up on the screen, but I already know what the word is. It's the word hok. And the word hok is a very unusual Hebrew word. Its companion is what we see in over in Daniel's prophecy, chapter 7, verse 25. And I think we mentioned that last time we were on here, that when it speaks about this Antichrist that thinks he can change the times and the law, the word dot is actually a Persian word, and it means decree. And oddly enough, the word hok in Hebrew is actually he is able to, or what happens is the judgment is coming upon the earth because they have tried to change the appointed times. And I have wondered, as a conjecture, could it be that because they want to build a third temple, when evidently Jesus Christ is our temple, there is a Greek word that is used when it says that he would be tabernacled amongst us. And that Greek word actually means that he is in a tent, that, the Heavenly Father has come down in a tent among us. And which, signifies, like it was in the days of Moses when they had the tent of meeting. And of course, we know the scripture speaks about the Most High dwelleth not in temples made by hands, but a body hast thou made me. And so it's almost as if Daniel in chapter 7 there is speaking that they want to change the decree, which would be the original decree that Cyrus gave for the building of the second temple, he knowing that I shouldn't say that he knew, but evidently it's obvious that God was preparing the physical temple for Christ to come, because the judgment would have to begin at the house of the Lord. And and so I'm thinking quite frankly, with this world turning upside down, so to speak, and of course, I know you're using it more as an analogy, but at the same token, it really does seem like that we are coming to a place to where the earth is almost as if it is to be turned upside down. It'll be that much disaster upon this planet.
Yeah. And I like that you brought that up about, what the scripture talks about the, the earth rocking to and fro and being turned upside down. Because I've often wondered that, about the pole shift and everything, flipping upside down in a physical form. If that's exactly what that meant, if it was more, more symbolic. And so I tend to, what you were talking about does make quite a bit of sense. And interestingly enough, and that's kind of the direction I'm going to be going with this tonight. And I do want to get into the discussion about Israel and the Gaza takeover and the Third Temple, but I'm going to save it on purpose towards the end. And the reason why I'm going to do that tonight is because this interview that we're doing is kind of a two-parter interview. We're talking tonight here on YouTube because most of the subjects, if not all of them, are pretty well safe for us to discuss. But the part 2 interview, we discussed, I'm going to have Stephen Ben-Nun come on and his wife come on, and we're going to get into the Noachide laws. Because when we begin to start talking about the Gaza takeover in Israel and the Third Temple, which we'll get into that discussion, it's going to lead into, in my opinion, those laws that are coming. And so that's why I want to bring you guys in on a separate platform relatively soon, and we'll have that discussion, but it won't be here on YouTube because I don't know if it's going to be community guideline friendly or not. But we'll have it posted up over on our Patreon for everyone to see, and over on Rumble and other places that we do that. So that's why I'm saving that subject for the end of this interview, so we can segue into that next one when we meet together to do the recording. But you brought up Earth changes. With things that are going on, and so that's where I'm going to start off tonight. And the idea is to try to do the best we can to project the best we can with the knowledge that we have and spiritual discernment of where we're going to go throughout this year. We're halfway through February now. We've definitely seen a lot. We're not trying to like prophesy or fortune tell or anything like that. That's not our intention tonight. But we just want to follow the signs that are before us and where this is leading us as we get into this year and really the next couple of years, so to speak, should the Lord tarry. And so the first one tonight is Earth changes. And, people I've already seen in the comments tonight, people are talking about, the volcano that's getting ready to blow in Greece. I think it's Sardinia, that real popular island with all the white stone, real pretty area. There's a massive underground volcano in that region that's getting ready to do its thing. We had a strong 8.0 earthquake that took place in the Caribbean Sea, still having some strong aftershocks happening there, and even on I think that's the coast plate over there. They're having some significant issues, and so we're seeing the world's really acting crazy. Santorini. Thank you, Ian. Santorini, that's what it's called. Then, all of a sudden, the last couple of weeks, I don't know if you noticed this, Brother Stephen, but the news is now talking about this asteroid that's on its way, that they say it's not going to be, a wipeout of mankind, but it could destroy, a good-sized city and kill everybody in it. And so now they're looking at trying to send some craft up there to knock it out of orbit, which if anybody watched the movie Armageddon, that didn't work out very well. Then I even on Sky News out of Australia, they had a guy on there about possibly using nukes on this thing. And so there's changes taking place. Of course, the sun has been busy, although last look it was starting to calm down a little bit. So things are happening in the earth and above the earth. I know you did a video just recently on the effects of Planet X, or what NASA calls Planet Number 9. So what's your thoughts on this, as we move forward in this?
Well, I've actually had the privilege of speaking to another scientist about it, and he tend to lean more towards what the government contact that I had spoke about, more closer to 2030. And he did say, though, it could be as far away as 2040 in his estimate of time. He's a 71-year-old guy, very knowledgeable on these things. And he said, all the signs are there. And then when I went back and I was reviewing some of the earlier broadcast I did on this, there was one man by the name of Robert. He never did give his last name, but he was the man that actually had the privilege of being able to read the notes of Carlos Munoz Ferrada, and he's the Chilean astronomer that had predicted very accurately many of Chile and other parts of the world's earthquakes, major earthquakes that would cause mass loss of life within just hours of his prediction time frame. And the one in Chile, he predicted, I think 20,000 people died in that earthquake. And that was back, I think, in the 60s when it happened. I may be wrong on the years there. But and then he said that he was given the access to be able to read his notes because he was an astronomer and he spoke Spanish. And one of the things I asked him about was, did Carlos talk about weather changes preceding the coming of the binary system? And so he told me, he says, I'll have to kind of say it in my own words. He said, on what I read in his notes, because it's kind of difficult just to translate it outright. But he said that, yes, there would be definitely catastrophic changes in the weather on the Earth before the coming of this binary system. And he said those changes would include hypercanes. He said that we would begin to see like South America would begin to start seeing typhoons, something they're not really accustomed to seeing very much, that would begin to happen there. One of the things that came to my mind recently when I did this recent interview was my Washington contact had told me a couple of years ago. He said, as this thing gets closer, a couple of things you would see. And even before Mike from Around the World was saying these things, I had already started talking about the inline winds. And I don't know, it's three years or so ago, I guess. And I remember we had our first inline wind probably a month after I first spoke about it. And it came across the Northwest at 130 mile an hour winds. But he told me then, he said that would increase. Another thing he told me that we would see, he said, where it should be warm, it'll be cold. And where it should be cold, it'll be warm. That'll be another thing that you'll notice in your weather changes. And sure enough, when I was looking at this, like in the case of snowfall, Nebraska has only had like about 3 inches of snow so far this year. It's like 30 or 40 inches below its average for snowfall. And then you go across the south when that snowstorm blew in. And of course, I was raised in the Gulf Coast area there in southern Alabama and northwest Florida. I've seen 60 years old. I think I've seen snow twice in my life down there, back in the 70s. And then again, a little tiny bit somewhere, I think in the 80s or 90s one, we had a little bit. But right there where my dad lives at Milton, Florida, they had 10 inches of snow. The military base in Pensacola, Florida had 7.5 inches. Louisiana had 7 inches. Mobile, Alabama, Mississippi, all 7-8 inches of snow right all the way across. And these were records. I mean, the oldest record they had in Pensacola was in 1856, I believe it was, 3.5 inches of snow. Other than that, 10 inches of snow. My son-in-law was standing in the street and the snow was up to his calf. Of course, I kind of made fun and said he's short and that's why it looked so deep. But no, it was 10 inches of snow is a lot of snow. So you've got that. You've got the earthquakes going off. And quite frankly, too, they're not telling you the true seismographic sizes of the earthquakes. There were several that I looked at about a month ago that were around 4.6, 5.6 from what they were saying. And I've been in a 4.6. 4.6 is nothing. And they had this one that was a 4.6 overseas, and the buildings were swaying back and forth. And I'm like, there's no way. There's no way. But then, of course, I remembered, too, that I was told that they're underreporting what the real sizes of the earthquakes are because they don't want to cause panic and alarm. But that we would eventually see earthquakes as high as 9s and 10s would be how big they would get. And, of course, if you remember the Alaskan earthquake back in 1965, I believe it was a 9.4. And it left a massive canyon in the ground there in Alaska, and multiple tidal waves, and they were felt all the way down to South America, Hawaii. I mean, it was just unbelievable the number of tsunamis that earthquake triggered. So it's happening everywhere, and the grounds are definitely being shook up. And we see already Africa with this massive crack in the ground, and even seismologists are saying that Africa is fixing to split and the continent will open up wide enough that the ocean will flow in.
Yeah, I grew up on the Gulf Coast, just outside of Houston in Southeast Texas, and I can only remember like one or two times my entire life, all the way until I was like 20 years old when I moved away. It never snowed. We never got snow, maybe twice, maybe an ice storm, and that was it. And then since I've moved away, it's like it's become more frequent that they're getting those. And just in, that part of the area, my cousins are sending me pictures, and they had more snow there than on the ground than what I had here in Michigan. And we haven't even had a major snowstorm yet this winter. We've had, an inch here, 2 inches there. It's been cold. But we haven't had the big snowstorms that we normally get. And, you were talking about the cold hitting places it shouldn't. We've got another polar vortex coming down next week. And it's looking like snow is going to return to the Gulf Coast states again, heading next week. And so the forecasts are just coming out today. I was looking at them, and it looks like, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, North Texas, all those places are about to get slammed again with yet another big snowstorm coming. So it's a very historic weather pattern that we're in for sure. And so, and I remember Mike talking about this, that these winters we would see just things really shifting. You'll get low temperatures in the teens and single digits, and then within hours, those temperatures will rise. It'll be right up to 80 degrees, with those things coming. And so, very interesting weather phenomenon coming. And, last year we got blessed last year with the hurricane season that we had, because we were so close. And I don't think people realize just how close we were to having a massive hypercane in the Gulf last year. And just at the last moment, that thing decided to go into eye replacement. And it didn't quite manifest, but that would have been extremely devastating. But we've been getting very close each year, each hurricane season, with seeing those hypercanes. We've talked about that several times here on the channel about that. And so, but yeah, the weather patterns are definitely changing. We reported here over the summer that even the Sahara Desert was greening up. Rains were returning into that area, and so which that had a lot to do with the jet streams moving and things like that. And I got BpEarthWatch involved on that one, and of course he took off and did his own tons of work on that. And but that was pretty interesting to see that this summer. So a lot of activity going on. And so this spring, with tornado season coming, which we are expecting in the areas that are going to get snow next week, are getting tornadoes this week. So keep an eye on the weather for that, because we are expecting a bit of a tornado outbreak this week, and then snow on top of that next week in these areas. So that's what's going to be happening there. Kind of shifting gears a little bit, going into the next big topic that's been all over the news. Elon Musk was part of a meeting that took place. I think it was over in Europe, but this was the artificial intelligence meeting. Of course, we see a lot of the commercials now are all AI. I don't know. It seems like there's less and less acting taking place. We know that there's the initiative through the Trump administration to make the United States the number one artificial intelligence infrastructure in the world. We know that Mike has talked about that once they turn to AI on, we won't be able to ever go backwards, which that's been turned on now. And so with all this AI stuff taking place and us moving quickly into this new world, what do you, in your opinion, and maybe some of your contacts have talked about this, where do you see this really taking us? Because they're going to make it look all cute going forward, but it's not cute.
No, it's not. I can see where AI could be a benefit in some areas, but the problem is I'm sure you're familiar with, Anthony, where when they first were really getting into AI, and I forget what year it was, but the system nearly shut our country down. Got a hold of our power grids, everything. The system had determined that the biggest threat to humanity was humanity itself. And then it perceived that they were trying to shut it down. And so it began to do safeguards to keep itself alive. And, so there's a lot of concern with that because, with technology, you bring some very evil things. And one thing people may not realize, even like with your computer screens and your phone screens, etc., these are made with, what some call black goo. It's a lead crystal substance there. And I remember Harold Villa, he's a German scientist, a good friend of mine, and he would come to Prague and we would talk a lot of scientific things, which most of that was over my head. But he said that at one point, the government had him working with this substance. And he said, and he was telling me it's part of technology everywhere you go. He said, you just don't realize that it's part of technology. He said, the strange thing is it's got like a life of its own. And he said, I had it on the table, and he said, just a blob of it. And he said, the next thing I know, it would like stand up and look at me. And he said, and then I began to notice that I got these very, very hateful type of vibes being around this stuff. And he said, I don't know if you know this or not, he said, but when after the end of World War II, they found in one of the Nazi bunkers a lot of the black goo rock there. And he said that they had reported when people were around it, just the worst of the worst kind of evil spirit would come across you. And, so I don't know enough about computers to know for sure exactly how the technology is formed, but that's what I was kind of led to believe, that that's part of what we have. So, what could happen next? I don't think it's going to be good overall.
Yeah, it's definitely, in my personal opinion, it could be used for good, but we all know that that's not going to happen. In my personal opinion, and I've mentioned this before, when we look into AI, artificial intelligence, I believe it's definitely going to be used for the mark of the beast. Definitely used for the disclosures that are coming up, which is going to be our next topic here in just a second. And you have to understand, when we have the Antichrist system in place, which is basically what's happening in front of our eyes, this whole thing is coming together very quickly before us. We're not going to be able to hide nowhere. AI is going to know what you sound like. AI is going to know your footprint. It's going to know your body temperature. You're not going to be able to hide in the mountains of Appalachia because, the drones are going to be AI controlled, and they're going to know exactly where you're at and know your breathing signatures and all these things, which fits Bible prophecy. It fits that, no one's going to be able to hide. You're not going to be able to go into caves and not be discovered. But this is part of that Antichrist system coming into play, being able to manipulate the masses using AI. Like right now, you can kind of tell, when people use AI videos or AI pictures or anything like that, you can kind of tell the difference between like a real photo and a real video versus an AI one. But I anticipate as we go on through the year and in the next couple of years, that's probably going to change quite significantly and going to get very hard to know, if what you're looking at is actually real or if it's not. And that's going to be a huge player in the upcoming, delusion that's going to come across the planet for sure. So, that's kind of my take in it. But I think what we're seeing now is really the platform for this entity to come on and begin to do what prophecy says he's going to do. And so, speaking of disclosures, I don't know if you watched the Super Bowl on Sunday or not, or know anyone who has. I know L.A. Marzulli did a video about this, but they did quite a few commercials about aliens on Super Bowl Sunday, and they made it kind of cute. There was a fight for a bag of Doritos between an alien and a human being, and then there was just like this idea to normalize, this extraterrestrial type thing. Which anytime I get into this conversation, I always put this little disclaimer out there first. When we talk about extraterrestrials or aliens or anything, that we're actually referring to fallen angels, demonic entities. Okay, we're not talking about ETs or or little green men from Mars. Just putting that out there. But we've seen this disclosure. We've seen, an increase in behind door meetings in Congress and things like that. And I anticipate that we'll continue to see those. My gut feeling is don't be surprised if Elon Musk gets involved in some of these disclosures and we see these things get put out. And so Cheyenne wants to know, did the Doritos win? I think the aliens won, actually. But as we go forward into this, and I know you've taken a strong study into this yourself. What's your thought as we continue with these soft disclosures? Because we've been kind of in this soft disclosure for a few years now. And people are really they're kind of, warming up to the idea. We had all these drones that flew around, which we talked about, a couple months ago, and now that's kind of died down. And so, where do you kind of, what's your thought process? Where do you see maybe the next fun thing that we're going to have with this particular subject?
The way it's been portrayed to me is that you're basically being groomed and prepared for the acceptance of Nephilim, and that to be a part of your everyday life, and that they're going to claim that they're the ones that have created mankind, that they will be the ones to say that they tried to give us a chance, we basically flubbed it up, and they're here to save the day. So things were supposed to get much worse with yet another, we won't say that, but you know what I'm leaning towards, another time here of people not doing so well. And the greater of these types of events that happen, and the worse they are, and the worse humanity gets, and it is basically begging for a way to someone to come along and be the so-called savior of the world. That's what they're looking for. And I have a feeling that it's coming. And speaking also, too, jumping back to artificial intelligence just for a moment, I remember a couple of years ago, I was talking to my Washington source there, and he told me that the insurance companies have really been behind AI for being the ones that control our medical industry. And he said, we're not far from that happening. He said it's getting very close to where they're going to allow that to take over. And, so the human side aspect of that will be lacking. I can imagine, though, here's where it gets really sad, though, Brother Anthony, is that the people, when they begin to look at this situation and they see, for example, all their distrust in the system, if I could say it that way safely, there's a lot of distrust, and there's becoming even distrust on both sides of the coin because so many alternative things were experimented upon, and in some cases had very fatal consequences. So as a result, and I have a feeling that that's probably going to increase if we have another scenario again. And if it does, the goal will be to say, look, you're failing in your human endeavors. So these entities here would love to be able to tell you that, we're here to save the day, so to speak. They talk about this awakening, so to speak. It's become more of a new age terminology than anything. But even with that, Brother Anthony, I am very concerned. I have watched a lot of this discussions on things like this, and I see that Christ is being left out so often. Even in some of because you're hearing about all kinds of testimonies of people that are experimenting in some of these realms, and I study a lot of ancient documents, and so from the studies of that, the one thing that's always been consistent is that, especially in the Egyptian works, Jesus is never left out, and I see that becoming a trend, and I can only imagine if you couple that with artificial intelligence, and then you couple that with a disclosure of, listen, when they go to do the disclosure, they're going to tell you this is where your technology come from. I already know that, and Mike would know it as well, because it is where our technology come from. Our fiber optic cable come from the Oswald crash. That's where we retrieved fiber optic cable. That's how we learned to do fiber optic cable, was from that crash right there. Russia likes to pick them off as they're flying over the Arctic there, and every once in a while we luck up and grab one of the units that crashes and bring it back, and we go to reverse engineering it. So, we've had spacecraft in American government for decades now of our own. Some are nuclear powered, which would be considered more of the primitive type of craft. But it's really just these little devils that have harnessed technology. And let's consider one thing too. When we look at the scripture of the fall of the angels, not all the angels fell. Not all the angels were cast into. Let me put it this way: there was a lot of them that fell, but you only have a certain number that were imprisoned. And, I remember somebody sent me, Brother Anthony, they sent me an email one day, or a text, I think, or maybe a message on one of my videos. And they said, it's been proven that sicknesses are actually demonic entities in the human body. I'm sitting there thinking to myself, how long did it take humans to figure that one out? I mean, hello, this is what Jesus says when he says, cast the devil out, if you listen, and that doesn't make a person evil when they're sick. That just means that Satan is trying to take your physical life. and it's not Satan himself, but yes, a spirit that can inhabit a cancerous tumor in your body is in essence an evil spirit living in that deformed cancer, sucking on your life, trying to kill you. And I remember years ago sharing that with my doctor, and it was really beautiful, Brother Anthony. He says he listened there. We went out to eat together, and it was late one night. He's from Trinidad, and he listened for a long time. I talked to him about divine healing and how it works and how the spirit lives in the cancer. And even I said, like in leukemia, it's no different, right? We go going through all this. And he says, we walk back out to his car. We get into his car. And he says, Stephen, he says, I believe these things that you say are true. He said, if that be true, and he lifted up his center console in his car. He pulled out a pack of cigarettes. He said, if my wife knew I did this, she would kill me. He said, I believe then if you can cast the devil out in a person, because I explained to him that when you cast the spirit out, a lot of times the person gets sicker. I said, why? Because the tumor dies. The life is cast out. The spirit is cast out of the tumor. The tumor swells up in the person. The white blood cells come, they break the tumor down, and it flushes the tumor out of the body. So normally for several days you might get sicker, but don't doubt it because you're healed, right? And I was explaining all this to him. He said, if that be the case, then you can pray for me, and the spirit that is causing me to smoke this cigarette will leave me, and I'll smoke no more. I said, absolutely. He said, then you pray for me. And I prayed for him, and he was delivered of smoking. So sorry about getting off on that tangent, brother.
Oh, no, you're good. It's good. And we know that's why the scripture tells us, that by his stripes we are healed. And so, yeah, it's and there's we have a lot of people that deal with different types of illnesses and situations, and so it's always good to see and hear a testimony of the power of prayer and what God and through the blood of Jesus will do for you if you just simply allow Him to do it and believe. And so, no problem with that at all. I do want to take us to the next spot here. And this is going to be kind of I know for you, this is going to be a special area in your personal heart here. But I do want to talk about this Gaza takeover, things going on in Israel, and the potential of the third temple. And I'm going to do my best to kind of lay the foundation here, and then I'm going to let you take off with this. But we, of course, last year and over the last year or so, we've been seeing the things go on in Gaza and Israel going in and bombing Gaza, and pretty much Gaza's been destroyed. Of course, that's in the last administration. This administration's coming in and going to buy up Gaza. Now, I have taught on here on this channel for the last couple of years actually that they would turn Gaza and the West Bank into a huge economical center for the Middle East, and it's going to be huge. It's under my personal thought process that this will probably be the new, almost like Babylon of the Middle East once they get done with it. And this is also part of end times prophecy, because in some theologies, this is where the Antichrist would actually begin his reign and rule from this particular economic mecca that's being built. We've talked about it on this channel. I've talked about that there would be a new airport, there'll be casinos, there'll be restaurants, there'll be hotels. It's going to be a huge, huge thing in that area that they're going to do. Now, the thing is, you have somebody in charge here in the United States, President Donald Trump, who knows the art of the deal and has a good relationship with Israel. And it's under my personal opinion, and this is just an opinion, but it will not surprise me that within the next year or two, or in between now and at least this end of this administration cycle, that we don't get a deal in place as we're taking over Gaza and making this new economic center. that we don't get a deal somewhere in place for Israel to build the third temple. Now, when this temple gets built, of course, everyone's going to get very excited. The Christians will probably repeat what was done in 1948 when Israel became a state, and everyone's going to be standing on their roofs waiting for the rapture to happen. But I want to tell everyone tonight that if this third temple gets built, and there's talk of it, there's talk of it right now, of a deal for them to do it. It's happening. There's talk of this deal. You have to understand that this is an abomination before God, because this is the restarting of sacrifices. And God already sent his son, Jesus Christ, as the final sacrifice for our souls. So to go back to do something before then is an abomination before God. And this is not going to please the Lord very well, which is going to lead us into this 7-year tribulations. And really, this is kind of the beginning of some big problems the earth will face. Now, am I saying that if this thing gets built, we're going to go straight into it right away? Not necessarily. This third temple can sit around for 20 years before, we jump into, the Great Tribulation or anything like that. But there's a lot going on there, and it's very noteworthy to pay attention to what's happening and to get some inside information on what's taking place. So my intention is not to get too political with this particular issue, but at the same time, you can't help but ignore, okay, something's going on here, and it's a little bit, it's very interesting to see how this is turning over, and it's turning over very quickly. This is going to be a fast work. So there's my.
You've got the stage set.
I got the stage set. So, all right, Stephen, I'm going to let you perform now.
Okay. I think you did an amazing job on it. I'm actually trying to pull up on my phone real quick. I wanted to pull up a little map there so I could get a better visual, so I could explain this a little bit better to people. All right. If you look at a map overview, you want to be able to include Egypt. You want to be able to include Saudi Arabia, and what we have here is that Saudi Arabia is building a city right there just north of Yemen. It's one reason why they want to get control of Yemen very well, of that area, actually a little bit further north of Yemen. And the odd thing is of course, you got Mecca in this area as well. But the city called Neom is one of the first and most futuristic AI cities in the world. It is part of the Silk Road Initiative, or the One Belt, One Road initiative. It is also where Ron Wyatt discovered Mount Sinai, or at least believed to be the real Mount Sinai. The Saudi government really protected that area very well. In fact, do we still have video, brother Anthony, where people can see? Because I don't see it on my end.
Yeah, I see you. I'm seeing you.
Okay. Right here, this was the second book I wrote called Yam Suf. And on this book, well, I don't know how well it shows it up there. Ron Wyatt's wife, Mary Lou Wyatt, she had given me permission. It's been the only time it was ever given permission to publish, although it's published everywhere. The golden chariot wheel that Ron discovered on the Gulf of Aqaba. On the opposite side of that ocean floor, it's at another lady, and her name slips my mind right now, but she discovered the chariot wheels on the opposite side of the sea as well. And then and I made one discovery myself, not intentionally, but the mountain was burnt directly across the Gulf of Aqaba where Ron alleged that they crossed based on these chariot wheels. I don't want to really dwell too long on that. The whole point is, though, it is really a place that Israelis and Christians alike have longed to be able to go and visit. And the Saudis have been holding it as a gem. I was actually at one point invited with one of the princes of Saudi Arabia to go there to see it, along with part of the Wyatt family years ago. But anyway, Gaza and Egypt and Saudi Arabia are going to make a tri-city state. This was part of the New World Order project that I was told about. The destruction of Gaza and removing of the Gazan inhabitants was long planned in order to be able to prepare for this city. So I really commend you, Brother Anthony, for seeing this far enough in advance already yourself and speaking about it, because you're exactly right. I personally never did. I mean, I never connected the fact that we're going to go out and kill all the people, and what they don't kill, they're just going to take and totally move them to some other part of the world. But this is part of that agenda. And I did know, though, in Ashkelon, they never have begun the process yet, but the Chinese had won the rights to build a large port there. And I think it's because their intention is to dig another canal from the Gaza Strip, the southern side of the Gaza Strip, right straight down to the Gulf of Aqaba. They're also planning on, as Netanyahu pointed out recently after Trump agreed to take over the whole area, he shows the plans, which you could tell it was AI generated, but already they had the plans for turning it into a metropolitan area with rails down to the Neom city. I'm sure they're also going to include rails to Cairo, Egypt, because all these places are going to be considered sacred places. And of course, the third temple will also be built on the Temple Mount. Now, I know Yehuda Glick used to tell me, in fact, Yana, my wife, and I interviewed him one time right on top of an ancient hotel overlooking the Temple Mount from the Mount Zion. And he said at that time that they would build the temple alongside the Dome of the Rock. But there are a lot of hardline Arabs that would like it to be destroyed and built on top of that ground. I really don't think they will. I think they will build it alongside. But here's where the problem comes in. I stumbled on this whole issue of Daniel. I wasn't looking for it. And oddly enough, then I discovered in Isaiah almost exactly the same scenario. God is bringing judgment on the earth because they have changed the times. And this, even this issue of Gaza, you know, you have to understand, so the listeners that you have understand, I was born Jewish. I was bar mitzvahed in Jerusalem. I'm not a fake Jew. I'm a real Jew. I believe, though, that Jesus is the Messiah, 100% with all my heart. I was like the first Christian in my family, although I do have extended family further back that had became Christians already. That's true, but it was parts of my family I didn't even know about at the time. But in my immediate family of my mother's side, who were all Jews, from Germany that came here illegally to the United States because of the persecution of Adolf Hitler. There was a group of brothers that came here. So, I've got the whole Jewish background. Now, we did not attend synagogue and stuff when I was little, but we definitely didn't go to a church. That was one thing that was like taboo in my family, to go to a church. But my mother did at one time visited a church with a good friend of hers, named Doreen, and I was 8 years old at the time. It was London Baptist Church in Castleberry, Alabama, where we lived at, and that's when I gave my life to Christ, because something stirred in my soul so deeply, and I knew that I had to know Jesus as my Savior. And from that day forward, miraculous things always followed me my entire life. And when I was 40 years old, I tried to go to Israel. Oh, I lived in Israel when I was 40. and I did my best to try to share the gospel of Jesus Christ with the Jewish people. I went through a suicide bombing, the whole 9 yards. But what I'm trying to get at here is that when I speak my passionate heart about the people of Gaza, um, you have to understand, I know what it's like on both sides of the fence. I know what it's like to be blown up by someone that is angry. But it also made me think, why would this young girl do this? Why would she kill herself? You have to kind of put yourself in their shoes. What's driving this force? Now Hamas, terrorist group, I agree with that 100%. The Israelis that were murdered and slaughtered, the worst thing that could have ever happened. But what's even worse is when you find out your own people are behind it. Recently, Jonathan Pollard, and those of you that know the name is familiar might be scratching your head going, I know that name. Who's Jonathan Pollard? He was the Israeli spy that stole secrets from the United States and gave them to Israel. Now, in those days, I thought he was a hero, and I still don't condemn him myself for it, but eventually he got a presidential pardon under Trump, and Netanyahu was able to take him back to his country. He comes out I don't know exactly when he did the video, but he was doing an interview, and he says, some of my closest military friends fly attack helicopters. He said on October the 7th, when the attack begun, when the gate was being breached, he said they were already telling us it was being breached. The girls that monitor it said, the fence is being breached. He said their helicopters were locked and loaded and ready to go. And the military refused to let them fly. He said they made them stay grounded for 6 hours. 6 hours. So the slaughter of Israelis, somebody's got blood on their hands. I just did a message recently, Brother Anthony, remembering Naboth is what I entitled the video. And I remember how that Naboth, he had the field that Ahab wanted, and Naboth would refuse to give it to Ahab. And Jezebel, of course, Jezebel was a Lebanese woman. She was not an Israeli. She was Lebanese. And nothing against the Lebanese people, but she was a very wicked woman, as we all know. And she tells him, she says, are you not the ruler in Israel? You want the land? He says, well, yes, I do. She says, why are you mourning then? She went basically telling him, be a man. So she takes and signs the letters in his own name, sends it out, tell the locals there of Naboth's village there, bring him out, put him at the front of the line, get 2 false witnesses and accuse him and stone him and put him to death, just so he could have the field. And then she goes back and tells him, Naboth's dead. Go claim your field. What different? Listen, I knew 1 year before this event happened, but my source would not tell me what it was. He just simply said there's going to be an attack in the Middle East that will nearly start World War III. He said, if anything ignites World War III, it'll be what's going to happen in the Middle East. I said, is it going to be Israel? He said, Israel will be involved, but that's all I can tell you. Then we find out they trained for a year. So I was finding out right at the very beginning of their training. They trained, Israel knew all about it. I have too many people that I know in the IDF that were sending me the messages right after it happened. Rabbi Mizrahi, well-respected rabbi, Israeli, former IAF, Israeli Air Force, said also, it's an inside job. He said, no, he said, listen, I know. He said, I was there. I was in the Air Force. He said, a rat can't touch the fence without it being, they have 20 Jeeps on there in 3 minutes. So the thing is, it was a setup because of what they want to build. and they know it. I mean, to me, it's no different than Jezebel. And I think about Jezebel and her 400 prophets, and I think about all the Zionist prophets in America that are sitting there prophesying and whatever Jezebel wants. And sadly to say, the blood of many children. You have to remember, these little children had nothing to do with Hamas. In fact, Hamas was brought in by the Israeli government 2019, right before the Knesset. Netanyahu says plain, if you speak Hebrew, you can go listen to the video. It's public. He said, we must fund Hamas. He said, if we don't fund Hamas, the Palestinian PLO organization will get a two-state. And so they didn't want that to happen. So he said we had to have an opposition. And all the time they're being told, Ron Paul says at the Capitol, he said, if you take and you fund them, he said, you're going to have to kill them later because they're going to turn against you. And they did. Sure, they did. So did they use them I've listened to some of the video footages, guys that could speak English just as good as I could. Who are they? Who are these guys that come in? But it's just a little bit odd is what I would say. But now then we're looking at the building of the third temple. And then I'm looking at Daniel chapter 7. And when you look at verse 25, when I read it, when I read it in the Hebrew language, I'm like, oh my gosh, I couldn't believe what I was reading. We've always looked at this as an Antichrist scripture. And I agree it is, and everybody sees, he thinks to change the times and the laws. And we're all like, oh my gosh. And then what do we get? The Pope. It's the Pope because he changed. I think it's the Seventh-day Adventists that really kind of brought that one up. They said it has to be the Pope because he changed the Saturday, the Sabbath to Sunday. So he's changing the law and he has no right to do so. But the problem is the word that's written there in Hebrew is a transliteration of a Persian word. And it's not Torah. It's not the law. It's not the 10 Commandments. It's not 613 mitzvot of Moses' law through the Levitical law. We say 613, but really and truly Jews know it's not really 613. We just make that up. We add too many numbers in there that doesn't really belong, but that's a different subject altogether. But I'm sitting there reading it one day and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is not Torah. This is dot. Dot is a Persian word. And I actually had to do some research to figure out that it's a Persian word because I knew it had nothing to do with Hebrew, and I couldn't figure that. Why do we have a word here that's not a Hebraic word? It's kind of like Aramaic. Aramaic is written with Hebrew letters, and there's a lot of words that are very similar to the Hebrew language, but it's an Aramaic language. When you read the Dead Sea Scrolls, we have a lot of scrolls that are written in what looks like a Hebrew script. It is a Hebrew script, but it's Aramaic, and you have to know it's Aramaic so you know how to translate the language properly. So anyway, I'm reading this and I'm like, wait a minute, he's going to change the decree. This guy that comes along thinks he can change the time of the decree. That's really what it's saying. And I'm like, wait a minute, what decree? This Daniel is Cyrus's decree. Artaxerxes, Darius, and Cyrus. But Cyrus was the last one that says, I feel compelled that I must return the Jewish people to their homeland and to help them to restore their city and to build their temple. Now, little did he know it was because Christ was coming and there had to be a temple standing there in order for Scripture to be fulfilled, even though Christ truly is the temple. But there's coming a guy that wants to change the time. In other words, he wants to say that time 2,500 years ago is not really the time of the fulfilling of the coming of the Messiah. So I must change the decree that Artaxerxes or Cyrus brings out at the end there. I must change that time and say it's for today. Because after all, the Jewish people say that the Mashiach never come. And they're still looking under Jewish belief. We believe in a Mashiach ben Yosef, Mashiach ben David, which means the Messiah of Joseph and the Messiah of David. Why? That comes from Daniel chapter 9. Believe it or not, although we know that means the Messiah is cut off, he dies and then he's risen again. Obviously, the Jews know this. We know that it's written in the Talmud, by the way. And by the way, I have you can't probably see it on your screen there, but the Talmud is not one little book that you buy at the store. It's 25 books is what it is, or roughly about 25 books. But in the Talmud, when we read in there, we know that it says in there that according to Daniel's prophecy, the Mashiach must die. This is why we come up with this two doctrine theory. I say we because of being Jewish descent. And so we have this Mashiach of Joseph and Mashiach David. Now, it is believed that the Messiah, in Judaism, it is believed that the Messiah will rebuild the third temple. They're taking this from Daniel, but the problem is Daniel's telling you that that's a false Messiah that does that. In fact, in the Hebrew Matthew, and instead of using the Greek version Matthew that we have, which it doesn't matter, Matthew 24, I think it's verse 15, where Jesus says, this is the abomination of desolation, which Daniel said, standing in the holy place. But in the Hebrew version, which is about 500-600 years old, at least the oldest copy we have, it's kind of like Greek. Greek doesn't go back to the times of Jesus either. The oldest copy we have of the Greek version, I think, is the 4th century, something of that nature there. But anyway, in the Hebrew Matthew, he says, Ze Antichristos. It does a transliteration, which is actually Aramaic. Antichristos, that is spoken by Daniel. In other words, this is the Antichrist, which is the abomination that will make desolate. In other words, the Antichrist is the one that will desolate everything, that will stand upon the holy place. So therefore, what does the Antichrist do? He changes the times in the decree of Cyrus, and he goes and says, we can now build the temple on this place. He makes the way for that to happen. Now, I don't want to throw this on Trump's lap by no means, but the Jews are trying to say that he's Mashiach ben Yosef, and they think that Mashiach ben Yosef will build the third temple. I don't think it'll actually be him that actually determines of the building of the third temple personally, but they are throwing him under the bus, so to speak. And they haven't really, some rabbis actually think he's Mashiach ben David. But either way, for any true Christian, you would have to know that's an Antichrist spirit because, let's face it, Jesus already come. We don't get a new Messiah, and Israel doesn't get a separate Messiah. We either believe the Messiah that God gave us, or we don't. And if we don't, we bear the consequences. And I do believe there's still going to come another awakening, but it will be the house of Israel and not the house of Judah. Judah is having her opportunity right now. But there again, that would be depending on whether or not we could say whether or not some of the apocryphal works are accurate or not. But in one of those of Peter, there is a claim that the house of Israel will actually recognize that this is an Antichrist, and indeed Jesus was a true Messiah, and that they will become martyrs, just as their brethren were back during the times when Jesus was crucified, and they hunted down the apostles then. Maybe there's a possibility, a conjecture of that, especially if I take into consideration Revelation, where we look at the 5th seal and it says, how long, O Lord, until you avenge our blood? He says, wait a little season until your fellow brethren must be killed as you were killed. So perhaps that is a reference to that. I'm so sorry, Brother Anthony. I get on a toot and I don't know how to shut up.
No, you're good. I agree with you too that I know there's people out there that I've even done broadcasts and collaborations with, and I respect them, that believe that Trump is the Antichrist, and I don't believe that at all. However, I have mentioned several times that I personally, in my own personal opinion, do believe that the Antichrist is alive. I believe he walks among us. I believe that this entity is here, and it's very possible, as you were talking, this was kind of coming to me, that it's very possible that when we see the deal come together for this, that it could actually reveal this man of perdition in the midst of all this.
I think it will. I agree. I think it will, brother. Yeah. And I feel more strongly that the Antichrist has got to be Jewish. That's a personal opinion, mainly because the true Messiah was Jewish. So how could we have a non-Jew be the Antichrist? Now, that's just conjecture. I mean, like I say, I don't think Trump is actually the guy. But like I said, they're throwing him under the bus, kind of like to make him look like the guy. But that's not that's more, when I say throwing him under the bus, that's the Jewish rabbis. Of course, they don't intend to make it sound like he's a bad guy. They intend it for him to be a good guy. They feel that he is doing a great service for Israel. But as we know, the scripture says the blinders are still on until this day. So, I think the biggest thing, Brother Anthony, is that as Christians, we need to recognize that we've got to stand with the truth no matter what. And we're not, and believe me, you don't help Jewish people by saying we stand with you unconditionally. God never stood with them unconditionally. I mean, let's face it, the God of heaven, he's never stood with Israel unconditionally. He always put conditions on his word. And he said, if you do this, I'll do this. If you do that, then I'm going to do this. I mean, let's face it, it was very cut and dry. And of course, they found that they couldn't walk in that law either. This is why we needed Jesus Christ. We needed someone to help deliver us from the bondage of the law, because that law was just taking us into a direction that was just no good. So I am, I will tell you, it's kind of a little funny joke amongst Jewish people. We always say, it's such a happy day when a Jew finally recognizes that Jesus Christ is the Messiah, because we go, we don't have to do all this works after all. And especially if you're an Hasidic Jew, my cousin, I led him to Christ, and he was Hasidic. He was the full, black hat, shoes, and everything. And he didn't quit doing that even when he did give his life to Christ. He had done it so long in his life, he did not know how to change. So, but I told him that he didn't have to tie his right shoe first anymore. He could tie the left shoe instead.
Yeah. Let's see. But you were talking about a few minutes ago about, this person coming in and changing the order of things. And that's kind of where I'm going to leave off with that this evening, because with that changeover of the order of things comes the Noachide laws. Yes. And that's going to be an issue that I'm going to do a little bit of a study into it myself, but that's where part 2 of this interview will come in at, and we'll record that, and we will put that part of it that I want to do with you and your wife over on Rumble and on Patreon for sure. So I want to make sure that we do that, because that's part of all this. And this is where everything's leading and everything is going into this direction. The earth is responding to the sin of man, and is responding to the birthing pains of what is to come. We know that the AI takeover, this is part of the beast system and the rise of the Antichrist, and the soft disclosure of these aliens or entities, whatever they are. We know that this is just really smoke and mirrors for what's going to be coming. When disaster hits and when the church disappears, they're going to have to point a finger at something. This is all part of that. And then, of course, now what we're seeing with the Gaza takeover, Israel and the Third Temple, everything is really coming in. It's fitting together very nicely, and you can't ignore the Noachide laws. And I say that because there's going to be, even during the time of the Antichrist, there's going to be law and order in the world. It's not going to be this like free system that everyone thinks that it's going to be. There's going to be some issues there. So we'll talk into that, look into what exactly that is and how that's going to go and how that's going to be adopted during this short period of time when the Antichrist is here, and how we're moving into that system even now under the guidelines of conservatism. So we'll get into that on the next go around.
Thank you, brother. Yeah, it'll be a real treat too, because Yana, although she was not the first one to make them more public, I think actually Nehemiah Gordon, oddly enough, Nehemiah Gordon was one of the first ones. The question was coming up a little bit back years ago. And of course, Dr. Lorraine Day, her husband, Dan Dunnemeyer, was there was only two congressmen that opposed the Noachide laws being put into law, and he was one of those that did that. And so she has done an amazing research, and quite frankly, there is some of those in the intelligence community believe that this is the reason why our family was targeted and her father died, was because she had caused so much disruption by bringing that to the forefront. But I am happy to see a lot of people finally are speaking about it now. And that's a good thing, because people need to be aware that it's not just as innocent as it looks.
Absolutely. So, well, thank you so much, Stephen Ben-Nun, for being on here tonight and being a part of our broadcast. And we look forward to doing a recording with you guys real soon. We'll work that out and put the announcement out for everyone for that. But I do appreciate you taking your time out. I know you guys are real busy with other things going on. And so this was I think it was a very good broadcast, very enlightening broadcast, and just kind of helping put all the pieces together as we venture into this new season. And with everything changing around us, it's really hard to really keep up with it all. So, but we'll do our best as we go forward in 2025 and these next couple of years to come. And so we just know we're marching forward and getting closer and closer to the return of Jesus Christ and the new kingdom that will be established on our earth. Is basically what all this means, is we're getting close. So with that being said, everyone, God bless you. Thank you all so much for being on here tonight. Remember, we will be live with you guys tomorrow night at 6 o'clock Eastern Standard Time for Pastor Talk with my wife will be hosting it tomorrow night. So I actually will not be behind the camera for once, but I will be here in the studio behind the microphone. So other than that, make sure you guys like, share, subscribe. Check out Stephen Ben-Nun's channel. We have his all of his links in our descriptions box below for his channels, for his Patreon, all those places. Anything you guys can do to support his channel, whether it's just subscribing, check your subscribings because sometimes they get knocked off, and then we have to make sure that you guys go back and do it again. So
yes.
And then anything you can do, financially to help their ministry out as well. I know they would greatly appreciate that over on their Patreon channel. So that being said, everyone, have a great evening. God bless you. And we will see you guys tomorrow evening here on Daily Excellence for Pastor Talk. Good night, everyone.
Good night.